Okay, hello again. Once again, I am your teacher. I will be discussing to you Unit 3 because we're done with Unit 1 and Unit 2. Your Unit 1 is your correct usage. Unit 2 was correcting sentence errors. So in this unit, we're going to discuss developing watching and listening skills. So actually, there are 5 major or macro skills. We have watching, listening, reading, speaking, and writing. But let us first focus on watching and listening skills. So it says here, if in all practices of life we could learn to listen, if we could grasp what the other person is saying as they themselves understand what they are saying, the major hostilities of life would disappear for the simple reasons that misunderstanding would disappear. So when we try to look around us, there are a lot of issues, there are a lot of misunderstandings, and many other situations. May mga arguments, may mga pag-aaway, there are separations, may mga relationship na nasa-separate, nasisira because of misunderstanding, which is caused by failing to listen. Pero it says here that if only people will know how to listen, then misunderstanding would disappear. I don't know if you agree with that, but as for me, I agree with this because there are many people who keep on talking but they do not know how to listen, and that leads to misunderstanding kahit sa simple relationships lang, even for friends, something like that. Pag hindi nagli-listen yung isa, hindi mo na niya kino-comprehend yung sinasabi ng kanyang kausap, that leads to misunderstanding. So our first topic would be listening as a member of a live audience. So when we are talking of member of a live audience, example niyan is during the face-to-face, yung allowed pa ang pagkaklase, the teacher discussing inside the classroom and you students listening. That is an example of listening as a member of a live audience. So when we say live audience, the listeners could actually interact with the one who is speaking. Pwede silang mag-butt in, pwede silang magtanong, they could ask for clarifications. So that is listening as a member of a live audience. You are a member of a live audience. Now, what is listening? So the first one here is listening. This is one of the 2 dimensions of communication. So when we say dimension, if this dimension do not exist, then communication will not also exist. What are the 2 dimensions of communication? Of course, speaking and listening. Kung walang nagsasalita, there is no communication. Kung walang nagli-listen, lalo namang walang communication. So listening is one of these 2 dimensions of communication. So for some, sinasabi nila na the most important dimension is speaking, but for others, they consider the listening as one of the most important. So listening is also among the basic skills you need for success in life. Listening is primary. So of course, maraming skills na kailangan in order for us to be successful in life. Pero when you try to look back when you were still in elementary, in your high school years, in your senior high school years, the number 1 or the primary skill is listening. Bakit? In education, you will not be educated if you do not know how to listen. Next is, as a student, you often engage yourself as a member of a live audience. Just like what I was discussing kanina, na inside the classroom, you are actually a member of a live audience. Kasi pwede kayong mag-recite in the actual time. So kahit naman in the virtual discussion, in the new normal, if your teacher is using Google Meet, Messenger, Chatroom, or Zoom, you are still a member of a live audience. Kasi during the moment na nagsasalita yung speaker, pwede kayong mag-excuse, you can raise your hand and ask for questions, and that is listening as a member of a live audience. Next, as a member of a live audience, it is imperative that you must be able to hone your listening skills to observe etiquette guidelines. So when you say hone, you sharpen your listening skills, you improve your listening skills. Another definition of listening is, this is a continuing process that includes not only perception but also interpretation, assimilation, association, and reaction. When the listener perceives the speaker's sounds, he must remember them long enough to interpret their meaning, bring his own and associated meaning, then to respond to them. So listening is not just only using your ears to hear the words that is coming from the speaker. So hindi po yun ang listening, that is only hearing. The difference between listening and hearing is, hearing, you only perceive the words, you only perceive the sounds. But when you are listening, there are other processes involved, just like interpretation, assimilation, association, and reaction. So kapag after you perceive the word, after mong narinig yung word, you interpret its meaning by, of course, unang-una sa lahat, you remember the statement from the beginning up to the end. Kasi if you don't remember the statement, of course, you will not understand what the speaker is trying to say. Next is assimilation. You try to combine your experiences and the lessons you learned before in order for you to understand the meaning. So those are the processes. The process of listening is often contrasted with hearing. According to Landstein, hearing is considered a physical act, so involve mo lang yung ear mo, and listening is a mental act. So when we say mental act, there is already a mental process being involved. So hearing, she said, to do with your physiological capacity to receive and process sound. On the other hand, listening has something to do with assigning meaning. So to listen, according to Nicholas and Lewis, is to attach meaning. So if you only hear the word and you do not comprehend or you do not attach meaning, that is hearing. But if you try to process what you hear, you try to interpret, that is listening. Now we proceed to the different components of listening. So there are 7 essential components of listening. The first one is volition. Okay, what is volition? Volition is, in a classic article on active listening, define active as meaning. Thus, the listener has a very definite responsibility. So volition is your responsibility. Or on the other term, it's the will to listen. So yung parang your desire to listen, your willingness. So if you're not willing to listen kasi in the first place, you will not understand anything. But you first condition yourself, because when you will be engaged in listening, you have a responsibility, and that is the willingness to open your personality, open your mind, open your heart to understanding whatever you will hear. So, kapag kasi nasabi mo, hindi ko maunawaan yan, hindi ko maintindihan yan, I will not listen to that. So, in the first place, hindi mo na talaga maintindihan kasi sinasabi mo na you will not understand. You are not willing to listen. So, volition is your willingness to accommodate whatever you will hear. Next is focus attention. What is this focus attention? So from the term itself, attention, you give, or your mind should be free from any apprehension. So wala dapat gumugulo sa utak mo. There must be a focus. Next is perception. So ayan, nagkagulo-gulo yung ating slide. What is perception? This means you must be aware of the elements of message, speaker, and context. end, you must be able to be receptive and open to the messages of others. So when the third component of listening is perception. So hindi mo dapat pinipili kung ano lang yung tatanggapin mong pakinggan. So I don't like to listen to this because you will never understand the whole message kung hahati-hatiin mo lang yung gusto mong pakinggan. You must be able to perceive every word being uttered, and of course you must be able to accept who the speaker is. You must be able to accept where the speaker is talking to. Next is capacity to interpret messages and meanings of others. So the process of interpretation includes understanding. So sometimes your capacity to interpret message is based on your experiences. So minsan sinasabi mo, ano ba naman tong sasalita na to? Puro ganito na lang yung sinasabi. So hindi mo maintindihan because you do not have experience which is similar to the one being talked about by the speaker. So sometimes yung capacity natin na unawain ang isang bagay, it all depends on what ideas we have in mind, what experiences we have in life. So, ganon. So, dapat we have to increase our capacity to interpret messages. Or, before you listen, dapat you must have a background about the topic or whatever the speaker will be talking about. Next is remembering. So, in critical listening situations, you need to consciously and actively include your ability to recall information conveyed. Because listening for a very long time, if you consume, say for example, 30 minutes and you do not remember anything, it's nonsense. So, nakikinig ka doon for 1 hour or less, that's already a waste of time because you cannot remember anything. So, you must be active in recalling information because that's the key to understanding. Hindi mo maiintindihan once you do not remember anything. Another component is response. Response is very essential in the completion of a good listening process. So, one thing that shows that a person is actively listening, nakikinig talaga siya if there is a response or if there is a feedback. Say, for example, asking questions, asking clarifications, sasabihin mo after the speaker, Mr. Speaker, narinig ko kasi na ganitong sinabi mo. May I just ask, if this is the situation, what will be your, so something like that. So, magtatanong ka, that is our response. That shows that you are really listening. Next is human being. In listening, you must always be receptive to the personal element. In both personal and business lives, people are the most important resource. So, of course, kung wala namang tao, if there is no existence of human being, then no listening process would take place. So, those are the components of listening. Now, when we say components, these work together in order for a successful listening skill to be achieved. So, para ikaw ay magkaroon ka ng magandang listening skills, magandang understanding, you should bring all of these components when you are going to attend a listening program, webinars, or something like that. Now, what are the requisites for good listening? So, aside from carrying those components, you should be able also to bring with you these requisites. So, when we say requisites, these are the important requirements before. Re means before. So, before you proceed to listening or you proceed to discussion. The first one is the listener must know the purpose of listening. So, when we say purpose, what is the goal? Is it to obtain information? Is it to gain knowledge? To make intellectual judgment? Is it to evaluate ideas? Is it to make criticism? Is it to appreciate or enjoy? So, there should be an awareness of the purpose of listening. Bakit ako makikinig dito? Para ba matuto ako? Para ba i-judge ko siya? Or para ba matawa ako? So, there must be a set purpose or set goal. Next, number 2 is the listener must understand and interpret symbols used by the speaker. So there would be a lot of symbol na gagamitin ng isang speaker. Say for example, yung tone of the voice, yung kanyang mga hand gestures, ano kayang ibig sabihin ng mga yun. Ayun pala yung speaker, nakikita ka na pala niya na hindi ka nakikinig ng maayos, ganon. So, inside the classroom also, kung naririnig mo na yung teacher mo ay parang lumalakas na yung kanyang boses, ibig sabihin the teacher is trying to catch your attention because you are doing something else in your still. Next, number 3 is the listener must put himself in the place of the speaker so that he can understand the thoughts and feelings that started from his mind and that what he wants to transmit to his listener. So, this is a very important thing because, when you do not place yourself in the shoes of the speaker, you will never understand the situation. So, parang hindi mo maintindihan na gagawa ka na lang ng kung ano-ano sa inyong upuan habang may nagsasalita. But if you try to place yourself sa kanyang situation, you will understand na if I would be the one talking in front, then it would be embarrassing naman and it would be insulting if I'm gonna make noise here and nandun siya nagsasalita. And another thing is, it would be easier to understand kasi nandun ka nga, you are trying to live the experience that the speaker is trying to share. Next is the listener must concentrate while listening. It's similar with focused attention. Next, the listener must be open-minded because this will help him in the place of the speaker to understand his message from his point of view and to look at it in the same way as the speaker does. Open-minded is, say for example, you are antisocial and your speaker is talking about interpersonal relationships or the significance of interpersonal relationships. Antisocial nga ako paano ko makikinig dyan? No, do not do that because when you are listening, you should be open-minded. Open-minded ka ba? So, something like that. Next is the listener must be courteous while listening. He must listen first. Paano makikita yung courtesy natin? Hindi yung just because you heard something bad for you, magre-react ka na kaagad. You must listen first. Understand first before reacting. Now, you are not being restrained from reacting, but remember to react courteously. This will maintain a good relationship. Hindi yung may narinig ka lang na isa pa lang na word, nag-react ka na kaagad. Sabihin mo, that is wrong. Your idea is wrong. Okay, so do not do that. You must be courteous, and courtesy is shown by listening before you react. And the last one is, the listener must play the role of the speaker. So, parang, kung ako yan, so, anong gagawin ko? Kung ako yung nagsasalita, anong gagawin ko kung ako yung kanyang listener? Kung ako yung speaker? So, something like that. So, those are the requisites in listening. Now, there are 3 factors that affect listening: the physical and mental state, prejudices, and environment. When we say physical and mental state is yung energy mo, yung ano ba yung naglalaro sa isip mo, are you happy, are you tired, are you depressed? So, it affects listening kasi if you are depressed, parang you cannot absorb all the ideas. Next is prejudices. Prejudices. This is defined as prejudgment. So, kung meron kang prejudices sa isang tao, say, against ka sa LGBT community, and there is a speaker which is a member of LGBT community, so parang sasabihin mo na, hindi yan maganda. So, you are having bias. Kaya hindi ka na makikinig ng maayos. And it affects listening. And the last one is environment. Of course, kung maingay ang environment, mainit, walang magandang ventilation, it affects listening. Kasi hindi ka na nakafocus sa pakikinig nagre-reklamo na yung kaloob-looban mo naman. Ang ingay naman dito, ang init naman dito. So, parang ganun or so, ganun. The physical state, prejudices, and environment affects the listening. Next, we have the etiquette. When we say etiquette, these are good practices to be a great audience. To be great audience member requires respect. So you must be able to develop respect. You respect mo yung presenter, yung teacher, and other audience. Next is, you must create supportive and focused atmosphere. So, kung nandun ka na nakikinig, nakikita mo na yung speaker ay kinakabahan, you smile. Because that creates a supportive environment. Next is, listen attentively. Next is, avoid activities that will distract the presentation. So, may nagsasalita, nandun ka na nagsa-cellphone, so parang it distracts the presentation. Make sure that you put your gadgets in silent mode kasi pag yan biglang tumunog, minsan nada-divert yung mga attention ng mga audience na kasama mo. Feel free to clap for appreciation and ask question about the presentation because that means you're actually listening. And then next is enjoy yourself. That is all about listening. Next, we proceed to watching TV film or TV or film documentaries. Okay, what about watching film or TV? So, it says here that a documentary film is a non-fictional motion picture intended to document a reality. So, when we are talking of documentary film, ito yung mga nangyayari sa totoong buhay. Its purpose is to instruct, to educate, or to maintain historical record. So, kung nakikita nyo yung mga record or documentation ng NAS Daily, yung documentary films sa iba't ibang channels. So, those are examples of documentaries. Its purpose is to make you aware and actively participate in a society that can make shape the future of this world. So, say for example, yung isang tribo, dinocument kung paano, ano yung kanilang mga traditions. That is to expose their hidden traditions for the other persons or viewers to be educated. So that is documentary film and its purpose. So what's the difference between documentary film and feature film? So when we say documentary, it's an actual representation of the facts, people, and situation. On the other hand, feature tells fictional stories, events, and narratives are also fictional. So, fictional meaning it's not true. Its primary aim is to educate, inform, and instruct. That is for documentary. Pag feature naman, its objective is to entertain. Next, documentary deals with reality. Feature deals with fiction or imaginary. Next, recorded real-life events. And then feature is compromise is scripted dialogue. So, meron ng creativity na naidagdag because its purpose is to entertain. Now, there are different types of documentary films. The first one is expository. So, meron tayong example is History Channel, yung mga nag-expose ng mga accomplishments ng different presidents. That is an example of expository. Next is observational. So, the filmmakers are engaged in observing the subjects of daily life. So, yung mga parang tribo, just like Ita, kung ito-document nila yung life ng mga Ita, yung daily living nila, and then yung nanonood ay nagdi-dictate siya, nag-narrate siya ng, okay, nakikita natin na sa oras na ito, ang mga Ita ay kumakain na, gumigising na, and everything. So, yung kanyang ginagawa is an observational film of the indigenous people. Next is participatory. Participatory is a type of documentary which combines the elements of both observational and expository. So, yung ating filmmaker ay nandun siya na nagsasalita, nandun siya behind the camera, nagtatanong, ganon. So, nagpa-participate siya in digging information. Next is reflexive. This type of documentary has similarity with participatory because it also includes the filmmaker in the movie. But this one, it highlights constructed scenario and does not create the sense of realism intentionally to emphasize the point of documentary. So, say for example, nagsasuggest yung speaker, nagsasuggest yung nag-film ng mga information, and then bigla na lang na-open yung isang case, na-open yung isang revelation, so something like that. That is reflexive. Hindi siya nakafocus sa iisa lang na situation for it, kundi na-open yung isa pang situation, isang event, because the filmmaker is trying to suggest something or trying to ask questions. Next is poetic. So, this type of documentary primarily focuses on images, experiences, and shows the audience the world through different set of the eye. So, parang sa ating kapuso mo, Jessica, so na parang meron siyang introduction na doon tayo magbe-base na parang yung ipapanood ay nakakatakot. 'Di ba? Sometimes you are being conditioned by the introduction of the host or the TV host. So, nakakatakot itong i-share niya because this is the introduction. So, parang ganon na the audience is being conditioned through different set of the eye. Next is performative. So, namang performative is actually sharing, the filmmaker is sharing his or her actual experiences. Now, when you will be tasked to analyze a documentary, ito yung mga tatanungin niyo sa sarili niyo. What is the principal subject of the documentary? Anong purpose nito? Does it argue? What is its intended audience? So, these are the questions you're going to ask yourselves if you're going to analyze documentary. Hindi ko alam kung maibibigay ko sa inyo tong activity na ito. I'm still going to plan. So, next is our lesson 3, listening to announcement and instruction. So, anong pagkakaiba ng announcement at instruction? Pag announcement, it's a short functional text, either spoken or written using formal words that contain information about an event that has happened or is going to happen so people in the community may know what, when, and where it is all about. So, tandaan nyo, yung question ng announcement is what, when, where. So, but in instruction, it's a detailed information about how something should be done or operated. So, usually, ang instruction lang ay it answers the question, how, paano ito gagawin, what are the procedures. Pero pag announcement, nandun yung what, when, where. So, announcement is used for giving some people information about what has happened and what will happen. So, anong nangyari? I-announce mo na ito yung ganap, ito yung napagmitingan, at ito naman yung gagawin sa program. That is an announcement. Pero, instruction is used to provide detailed information about a specific process, understand how to complete a task, and to make sure tasks are carried out in a safe manner. So, instruction is parang magsiserve siya as your guide kung paano mo i-accomplish ang isang bagay. Announcement versus instruction in terms of structure. So, ang structure ng ating announcement is ito, purpose, date, venue, and informing sender. So, ito yung mga nakapaloob sa ating announcement. Example, to all ESP GPA grantees, please attend the Bringing Program on May 13, 2020 2 at the Andres Campus Amphitheater from 8 to 4 p.m. Attendance is a must. For further inquiries, please contact Ms. Donna Makadangdang, the event organizer. So, ganon ang ating announcement. On the other hand, when you give instruction, ito naman yung kanyang mga content. Ito naman yung kanyang mga elements. We have the context, the purpose, the consent, the order, and the feedback. Ano tong context na to? First is, kanino mo ibibigay yung information? Ginawa na ba nila ito noon? Naranasan na ba nila? Or why are they doing it and not someone else? Next is purpose. Why are this instruction important? And what is the end goal? So, purpose is goal. Next is content. Content is how much detail have you given? Have you given specific enough? Are you using language your audience can understand? And have you used diagram? Gagamit ka ba ng diagram? Anong language pa gagamitin mo? Next, order. Ano ba? Because in giving instruction, the order is very important. You first indicate yung unang gagawin. Kasi if you try to write first kung ano yung last na proseso, then the outcome would be the other way around, or maybe the outcome would not be successful. And then feedback is, how do you know your instructions have been understood? Or this also allow them to clarify any steps they are unsure about that will result to a better finished product. So, example po ng ating instruction ay ganito. The students or two students with conflicting examination schedules kindly follow the steps below for scheduling of examination. First, secure the request for scheduling examination form from the academic head. Second, fill out the form and identify the course that you want to schedule. Third, consult your instructor about the exam to be rescheduled. Lastly, get the approved form from your course instructor on the day of the form was submitted for approval. The examination shall be rescheduled within 1 week. Do not forget to bring the approved form during the rescheduled examination. Failure to take the exam on the given schedule or filling out the request for rescheduling form shall result to a failing score. So, that is an example of an instruction. So, kung titignan ninyo, nandun yung first, last, ganyan na order ng ating prosesong gagawin. So, that is an instruction. Now, how do we listen to announcement and instruction effectively? First is, be genuinely interested in giving your full attention to the person who is giving the announcement. So, show interest. Next is ask questions, especially kung it's not clear para sa'yo. Hindi yung after na maibigay na yung announcement, after maibigay yung instruction, sige, proceed ka na lahat sa gagawin mo, even if hindi mo naintindihan. So, you try to ask questions. Do not assume that you know everything. Next is do not interrupt. So, minsan, sabi ko nga kanina, isa pa lang yung nasasabi, you interrupt na kaagad, you react na kaagad. You try to listen or you try to finish the person who is talking. And next is take brief notes. So, magsulat po tayo, especially if the announcement or instruction is very long. How about if you are the one giving announcement or instruction? Of course, the first one is get the listener's attention. So, kung makikita ninyo, ang unang ginagawa ng mga nag-announce is announcement. So, ina-announce mo na nila. Sumisigaw mo na sila to get the listeners' attention. Hindi nag-announce ka na iba ang gulo-gulo ng nasa klase. So, something like that. Next is be clear and specific about what you want. So, wag yung paligoy-ligoy. Direct to the point. If you are unsure whether or not your listeners understood, you allow them to make clarification. So, you ask your audience, naintindihan nyo po ba? Gets nyo po ba? So, ask those questions. Next is only give a small number of announcement and instructions at a time. Hindi yung ang dami mong announcement. Nang bilis-bilis mo pa. Next is your listeners might have difficulty remembering the large amount of information. Next, use direct and specific language. Yung naiintindihan ng mga ng mga tao. Don't leave your listeners guessing. Hindi yung after mong mag-announce, ano kaya yung sinasabi niya? Or ano kaya ang, so parang nag-guess na yung mga audience mo. So, wag ganon. And then, 6 is don't rush. Wag mong masyadong bilisan, especially if it's an announcement or an instruction. And last one, repeat announcement or instruction if necessary, especially if 3/4 of your listeners hindi naman nila naintindihan yung inyong sinasabi, you repeat your instruction, you repeat the announcement. So that is all about listening and watching skills. So I hope everyone listens very well. Again, summarize this in your notebook, and when I signal you to send your summary, you drop them in your group chat indicating your name on the upper right corner for every page of your notebook, the name and the date. So it says here, if a person smarter than you works hard, work 10 times harder if you want to be like him or her. So kung nakikita mo na yung isang matalinong tao ay nagre-review siya ng 30 minutes every day, mag-review ka ng maraming oras, 10 times 30 ka mag-review if you want to be like him or her. So, kung mas matalino na nga lang siya, review siya ng review, samantalang yung tao na hindi naman ganun katalinuhan, hindi pa nagre-review. So, how will they ever meet at one point? So, that will be all. Thank you so much for listening, and please share the link to your classmates. Thank you and good day. Keep safe and God bless everyone.